What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to College Football Talk with Peter Burnett. In today's episode, I'm going to be previewing the Week 12 action. Plenty to go over this week. Some really important games across college football, especially in the SEC. Before I get into it, though, if you're going to enjoy this video, please feel free to leave a like, consider subscribing to the channel, and turn on those post notifications so you're always up to date whenever I upload. Before I get into things in this video, if there's a little bit of noise, I apologize for that. I'll try to edit it out as much as I can. I've got the house next to me, they're working on a deck, and it's very frustrating to record while they're doing that, and I know also for you guys it might affect the sound a little bit, so I apologize in advance for that. But regardless, getting into things, starting things out, you've got number 9 Notre Dame at number 22 Pitt. Both teams are 7-2. The Fighting Irish are already in playoff positioning. The Panthers, meanwhile, have a schedule that sets them up to get into that playoff positioning. They're going to play Miami and Georgia Tech, that reverse order. They're going to play Georgia Tech, then Miami to wrap up their season. But in this game, to me, the key matchup, and that's kind of what I'm going to be highlighting. I'm not going to be going super in-depth in all these games, but kind of highlighting what I think is the key matchup in each of these. It's Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price against the number 1 rush defense nationally. Braylon Lovelace has 55 tackles, and then Jimmy Scott gets a lot of pressure. His numbers are reflected more in the stats, but I think that's also something that can translate to stopping the run, just being able to get into the backfield. So it's going to be really important to see how the Notre Dame offensive line does against this Pitt defense, knowing that they rank best in the country in yards per game allowed, and I think also they rank best in yards per carry by opponents. Obviously, you want that number to be very low, and Pitt does a really good job of that. Pat Narduzzi's a good coach, even with his comments this week about saying he didn't care if they lost by 100 or 110 or 130 or whatever he said. Obviously, that's a little bit facetious, and kind of also just shows the importance of their next 2 games, because even if they lose this one, they still have a shot to get in the ACC championship game. But if they win this one, then they start getting kind of into that conversation even more so. Now, I don't think there's really a way that Pitt can get into the playoff field without winning certainly the next 2 and the ACC championship game. Though if they won these next 3 games and lost in the ACC championship game or didn't get in, which would be difficult because the teams that are ahead of them, they would beat. So regardless, Pitt basically doesn't need this win, but it would be huge for them to bolster their resume and then obviously give them a lot of confidence going into those final 2 games and potentially going towards a ACC title run. But in this game, I do think Notre Dame is able to just outmuscle Pitt, and so I'm going to go with Notre Dame 31, Pitt 24. Next up, a couple big games out of the SEC. Starting things out, number 11 Oklahoma at number 4 Alabama. The Sooners are 7-2. They're the first team out this week of the College Football Playoff rankings. An interesting thing to watch here is how John Mateer does protecting the football. He's thrown 4 interceptions since returning from his injury, and the Crimson Tide lead the SEC with 16 takeaways. So how he does against an opportunistic defense that loves and does a really good job at creating turnovers will be really key to watch. Another kind of interesting thing, both of these red zone offenses are really good. The Sooners rank number 1 nationally in red zone offense, and then the Crimson Tide are number 16. Another key matchup, though, that kind of benefits or favors the Crimson Tide is that they're number 8 in red zone defense. So that's going to be key to watch. Does Oklahoma win out in the red zone, or does the Crimson Tide defense? Statistically, they're pretty comparable, pretty even, I would say, so that'll be interesting to watch. And then also, I think Ty Simpson, he's gotten a lot of credit, rightfully so, especially how he's improved since that first game this season against Florida State. But he's going to now be going up against the best overall defense statistically in the SEC. So that's going to be really important to see how he does, also how Ryan Williams does in terms of getting open and everything, and how they run the ball as well. So those are kind of some key areas. I like the Crimson Tide in this one, though. I'm going with Alabama 27, Oklahoma 23. Next up, huge top 10 game in the SEC. You could almost argue this one's potentially even bigger just because number 10, Texas, already has the edge on the Sooners with that head-to-head win. So if Texas keeps winning, it might not matter what Oklahoma does, unless Oklahoma were to beat Alabama, obviously. This game, though, number 10 Texas at number 5 Georgia. The Longhorns are 7-2. The Bulldogs are 8-1. To me, there's a lot of attention, at least I've heard, kind of from Joel Klatt and maybe even a little bit more nationally as well, on other networks, is the attention has been on Georgia's pass rush, and rightfully so. I mean, last year in this game, in the regular season game, they really got home a lot to Quinn Ewers. Arch Manning even came in as in reserve, I guess, or in relief. Eventually, Quinn came back into the game, but both kind of struggled against this Georgia pass rush. And this year, that's obviously led by C.J. Allen, who has 75 tackles, 3.5 sacks. But I think the attention should be maybe more on Texas's pass rush. They rank number 1 nationally in sacks per game with 3.78 sacks per game, and they have 34 total. It kind of was a slow start a little bit for their pass rush getting home early on in the season, but they've really dialed things up since then. Colin Simmons leads the way with 8 sacks, and then Anthony Hill Jr. has 64 tackles. So kind of some of the key guys offensively to watch, obviously quarterback Arch Manning for Texas, running back Quintravion Wisner, and then wide receiver Ryan Wingo. 3 main guys for Georgia are Gunnar Stockton, Nate Frazier, and Zachariah Branch. I like the edge here to Georgia. I think playing this game between the hedges is also massively to their advantage. And they were even able to go into Austin last year and get the win. So I think the Bulldogs get the win here. It's going to put Texas basically on life support for getting to the college football playoff. They still have that game, if they lose this one against Texas A&M, that if they win that one, then they maybe find a way to sneak back in. But this is a huge game for Texas. It's probably a little bit bigger for Texas than it is for Georgia, but I still think Kirby Smart gets his team to get a win here. And even if they go down early, I would not count them out because they've been a second-half team all year. So Georgia 21, Texas 14. Next, out of the Big Ten, another one of those really interesting matchup games. You've got USC's offense led by Jaden Mayava at quarterback, wide receivers Makai Lemon and Jacoby Lane, and their running back, King Miller. They have the number 2 overall offense, number 7 in scoring, and I think they're maybe number 10 passing the ball. In the top 10, I'm pretty certain of that. They're going to be going up against, however, Phil Parker's defense for Iowa that ranks number 4 overall, number 5 against the pass, and number 5 in scoring defense. So this is something you'd almost say is pretty balanced. Maybe you give the edge to Iowa because they're stylistically kind of set up to defend well against this. But Nebraska was too. Nebraska actually ranks ahead of Iowa statistically against the pass this season. Nebraska ranks 3rd. Iowa ranks 5th. But I also think USC did a good job against both Michigan and against Nebraska of winning that kind of physical battle up front. Now, they struggled against Notre Dame, but I think that's more something where for Iowa, if you're looking for something to exploit offensively, you keep running the ball like Notre Dame did against USC. And that's something that could be an issue for this USC defense going up against a team that obviously favors running the ball with Mark Gronowski at quarterback, Kamari Moulton, I think, if he's healthy, for the Hawkeyes offense. However, I'm going to go with USC here. I think the Trojans get a big win, inch closer to being in one of those college football playoff spots, and they're still going to have a couple big games, most notably against Oregon to finish the season. Finally, kind of an intriguing game out of the Big 12. TCU, who's 6-3, at number 12, BYU, who's 8-1. This is a big chance for the Cougars to bounce back. I think eyes in this one have to be on the TCU passing game. Josh Hoover is a really good quarterback. Horned Frogs put up pretty good numbers offensively. I think BYU gets a big bounce back, but look for this to be a close game, maybe down to the wire. I'm going with BYU 31, TCU 27. A few other interesting games of note across Power 4 conferences. You've got Florida at Ole Miss. This is kind of Kiffin watch, and it's also a game that Ole Miss will have to be careful not to look ahead too much. I think they lost this game to the Gators last year, so that might be something that gives them a little extra motivation to make sure they don't overlook it. Interesting game there, though, for Florida. What will they do at quarterback? They benched DJ Lagway in their loss to Kentucky last week. So what do they do here? I think Ole Miss wins. I think they win pretty comfortably, and I think they cover the spread as well. Next up, a really cool environment for this game and also an interesting test. Number 18, Michigan at Northwestern, this game being played at Wrigley Field. So really cool. It'll be cool to see a historic program like the Wolverines and even Northwestern as well playing in such a historic baseball venue. I got the Wolverines winning there. Next up, Utah at Baylor. The Utes are on kind of the fringes of being on that bubble to make the college football playoff. This is probably their toughest test remaining. They don't have a very tough final schedule to the season. On the road here in Waco is going to be tough, but I've got Utah winning this one. Finally, looking over the group of 6, the biggest game this week is number 24, South Florida, who would be the group of 6 representative in the college football playoff if the season ended today. They're 7-2 at Navy, who's also 7-2. This is going to be a really interesting quarterback matchup here. You've got Byron Brown versus Blake Horvath. The Bulls quarterback has almost 3,000 total yards, a little over 2,900 and 28 total touchdowns. And then Blake Horvath, who kind of inched into the Heisman conversation last year, hasn't quite produced at the same level as last year, but he's still really dangerous. He's got over 2,000 total yards and 20 touchdowns. I think, to me, USF has looked like the more consistent team this season. Navy kind of honestly let me down a little bit against North Texas, who USF beat. So in this game, I'm going to go with USF 30, Navy 24. South Florida continues to inch closer to being that group of 6 representative in the college football playoff. Finally, another interesting game here. Memphis fell out of the picture a little bit at ECU. Now, this is really interesting because Caden Hauser has the Pirates offense as one of the top 25 in the country passing the ball. He's a really good quarterback. Memphis, meanwhile, kind of struggles against the pass. They're 87th in the country against the pass. I think this is also, this game is in Greenville. It's in North Carolina for ECU. So I'm going to go with a little bit of an upset here. Not a huge one, but I'm going to go with East Carolina to get the win here and kind of dash any remaining lingering hopes for Memphis. But that's all for this episode for a look at the Week 12 action in college football. Let me know in the comments below your predictions for this week. Again, apologize for any noise that the mic's picking up. Thanks again so much, though, for tuning in to College Football Talk. I'm your host, Peter Burnett, signing out. Peace.